I'm going to share something with you that I've never told anyone in full. Stay with me until the end, and let me know what city you're watching from, because I have a feeling this story is going to hit close to home for a lot of you. My daughter-in-law posted on Facebook that she was finally free from the woman who ruined their marriage. She tagged my son. He liked it. So I made one phone call the next morning, and by sundown, everything had changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because the way you understand this story depends entirely on how we got here. And honey, the road is long. My name is Margaret, and I am 67 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom cond house in Savannah, Georgia. The same one my husband Howard and I bought when we retired from 38 years of building a small but honest commercial real estate business together. Howard passed 3 years ago from a heart attack, sudden and cruel. The way the worst things in life tend to arrive. He was mowing the back lawn on a Tuesday afternoon in September. By Wednesday morning, I was a widow. Howard was the steadiest man I ever knew. He never raised his voice, never made a promise he didn't keep. He used to say that a person's character is what they do when nobody's watching. I've thought about that a lot over the past year. A lot. We had one child, our son, Daniel. He came late in our marriage, after years of trying, and the joy of him was enormous. We poured everything into that boy, not just money, though there was plenty of that over the years, but time, attention, every ounce of love 2 people could give a child. Howard coached his Little League teams. I drove him to debate tournaments 4 states away. We stayed up through the night when he had a fever, celebrated every grade and achievement like it was a moon landing. Daniel was the center of our world. He grew up well, at least we thought so. Polite, smart, charming in the easy way that some people just are. He graduated from the University of Georgia with a business degree, found work at a marketing firm in Atlanta, and met Renee at a colleague's birthday party when he was 29. I remember the night he brought her home for the first time. She was tall, striking, confident to the point of being brash. She had an opinion on everything and made sure you heard it. Howard shook her hand and smiled his quiet smile. Later that night, after they'd gone, he said to me, "That woman is going to be a handful, Maggie." I told him he was being unfair. I was wrong to dismiss it. They married 2 years later. The wedding cost $68,000. Howard and I paid for all of it because Renee's parents, lovely people from Alabama, simply didn't have that kind of money. We didn't mind. Daniel was happy. That was all that mattered to us. The first few years of their marriage were good enough. Daniel got a promotion. They rented a nice apartment in Buckhead. Renee worked at a luxury boutique, spending more than she earned. But they seemed to manage. Howard and I would visit every few months, and there were holidays together, and it felt like family. Then Howard died. Grief does strange things to people. I know what it did to me. I became soft in ways I hadn't been before, more eager to please, more afraid to upset anyone who was still living. The idea of conflict felt unbearable when I was already carrying so much loss, and Daniel and Renee seemed to sense that softness. Or maybe they always knew it would come. I have asked myself that question many times in the dark. Within 6 months of Howard's funeral, Daniel approached me about buying a house. He and Renee had found a 4-bedroom craftsman in Decatur. A beautiful house with original hardwood floors and a wraparound porch. The asking price was $640,000. Their combined income did not support that mortgage, at least not comfortably. Could I help with the down payment? I gave them $120,000. I told myself Howard would have done the same. Within 18 months, there was a kitchen renovation. The appliances were outdated, Renee said, and the layout was inefficient. The contractor they hired charged $44,000. I paid for it. Then came the car. Daniel's was old, unreliable, and he had a long commute. A new one made sense. $38,000. Then came the vacation to Italy for their 5th anniversary. $12,000 for 2 weeks in Tuscany, which seemed extravagant to me, but I had not traveled much since Howard died, and perhaps I judged it unfairly. Then came the private gymnastics coaching for their daughter, my granddaughter Lily, who was 7 and had shown some natural ability. Then came the holiday party they hosted for 30 of their friends, which somehow I ended up financing. Then came, and then came, and then came. I am not a woman who kept careful accounts. That was Howard's way, not mine. I trusted people. I believed in generosity. I thought family was the one place you didn't need to keep score. It was my accountant, a no-nonsense woman named Greta, who finally sat me down 14 months ago and spread the numbers across her desk. In the 38 months since Howard's death, I had transferred or gifted a total of $612,000 to Daniel and Renee. That did not include the wedding. That did not include the countless smaller amounts, the grocery runs when they were short, the Lily's birthday parties I'd quietly funded, the dental work I'd covered when Renee's insurance fell short. If you added those in, we were likely past $700,000. I sat in Greta's office for a long time after she said the number out loud. Margaret, she said carefully, at this rate, in another 4 years, your retirement savings will be meaningfully compromised. I drove home slowly that afternoon. I made chamomile tea. I sat in the chair Howard used to sit in, the one that still held the shape of him somehow, and I thought about what I had been doing. I thought about all the times I had written those checks and felt the warmth of being needed. I thought about how that warmth had, somewhere along the way, become the only warmth I felt from my son's household. Because the calls had changed. I noticed it now. Sitting still in Howard's chair, Daniel called on Sunday afternoons, reliably, but the calls followed a pattern. "How are you, Mom?" followed quickly by a transition. "Hey, so we've been thinking," or "Hey, so there's actually something I wanted to run by you." The "how are you" was never a real question. It was a doorway. Last Thanksgiving, I drove 4 hours to Atlanta and arrived with 2 homemade pies and a casserole because I knew Renee found cooking stressful. I let myself in with the key they'd given me, and I heard Renee in the kitchen on the phone with her sister. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. The house has an open layout, and her voice carries. "She showed up early again," Renee was saying. "I swear, it's like she has no concept of personal space. We can't even have our own holiday." I stood in the entryway holding my pies. I set them down very quietly on the front table. Then I went back to my car and sat for 11 minutes before going back inside with a smile ready. I did not say anything. I should have. But I was still the soft version of myself, the one grief had made, and I swallowed it down and went in and helped set the table. That was November. By February, I had begun to understand that something fundamental had shifted in how Daniel and Renee related to me. The shift was hard to name because nothing dramatic had happened. No single event, just a slow withdrawal of warmth, like a tide going out so gradually you don't notice the shoreline has moved until you look back at where you were standing. Lily had always been a bright spot. My granddaughter was 9 now, curious and funny, and prone to asking the kind of direct questions that children ask before they learn to be polite. She would call me on her own sometimes, just to tell me about a book she was reading or a dream she'd had. I lived for those calls. I want you to know that. Whatever else I tell you about this story, Lily was never a pawn and never a problem. She was simply my granddaughter, and I loved her without condition. But even Lily's calls had thinned. When I asked her about it once, gently, she said, "Mom gets weird when I'm on the phone with you for too long." I did not push. She was 9. In March, I drove down for Lily's school recital. I had not been invited exactly, but I had always come to these things, and Daniel had mentioned it in passing the previous month. I arrived at the school and found Daniel and Renee in the auditorium, already seated with a group of friends. There was no seat saved for me. Daniel looked surprised to see me. Not displeased, just surprised, as if he had genuinely forgotten I might come. Renee did not look surprised. She looked at me the way you look at a minor inconvenience you've learned to accommodate. I found a seat in the back row. I watched my granddaughter play the violin beautifully, and I clapped the loudest of anyone in that auditorium. Afterward, in the lobby, one of their friends asked Daniel, "Is that your mom?" And Daniel said, "Yeah, just yeah," with the same tone you might use to confirm a parking ticket. I drove home that night and I cried. Not the soft grief cry I had grown used to since Howard died. This was something harder and older. This was the cry of a woman who has finally heard something she had been refusing to hear for a long time. I called Daniel the following Sunday. He transitioned to the doorway question after 4 minutes. there was a roof repair they needed help with. $18,000. The house was their biggest asset and they couldn't let it go. I said I would think about it. I had never said that before. There was a pause on his end. A brief recalibration. Of course, Mom, no rush. Just let us know. I did not call Greta again. I already knew the answer. I sat with it for 2 weeks, turning it over, looking at it from different angles. Then I called our family attorney, a steady woman named Frances, who had handled Howard's estate. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Margaret, she said when I finished, what outcome are you hoping for? I thought about that for a long time. I want my son back, I finally said. The real one. Then you may need to stop making it so easy for him to give you the other one. I spent a week drafting in my head what I wanted to say. I was not impulsive. I did not want to blow up in anger. I wanted to be precise, because precision was what Howard would have brought to this, and I owed it to myself to be Howard-level clear. I called Daniel on a Tuesday evening. I told him I would not be contributing to the roof repair. I told him that I had done a full accounting of what I had given them since Howard's death, and that the number was too large and the pattern was not healthy. I told him I loved him. I told him that I would always love him. But I told him that I was no longer able to be their financial cushion and that this was not a negotiation. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I hear you, Mom. And I understand. He sounded measured, even gracious. I was moved. I thought perhaps the conversation I had dreaded for months had actually gone well. I should have known it was too clean. 4 days later, Renee posted on Facebook, I don't follow her account, but a friend of mine from church, a woman named Dorothea, sent me a screenshot with a message that just said, Margaret, I think you should see this. The post read, sometimes the hardest thing is realizing that a controlling, manipulative person will never change. Setting boundaries with toxic family members is not cruelty. It's survival. Grateful my husband finally sees it too. Number family healing. Number boundaries. Number protect your peace. Underneath the post, Daniel had left a heart emoji. I read it 3 times. I set my phone face down on the kitchen table. I made myself a cup of tea and I drank the whole thing before I picked it up again. I was the controlling, manipulative person. I, who had given them $700,000 and driven 4 hours to watch my granddaughter's recital from the back row, was the toxic family member they needed protection from. And my son, my Daniel, had left a heart beneath those words. I did not cry this time. Something had clarified inside me, the way a cloudy broth clarifies when you strain it through cloth. All the softness burned away, and what was underneath was not anger exactly. It was something colder and more purposeful. I called Frances the next morning. I explained what had happened. I told her what I wanted to do. She said, Are you certain? I said, I have never been more certain of anything since Howard died. By noon, Frances had begun the paperwork to restructure the family trust. The provisions I'd set up after Howard's death had earmarked a significant portion of our estate for Daniel. Those provisions were rewritten. By 3 in the afternoon, I had called the bank and suspended the automatic monthly transfer I'd set up to supplement Daniel's mortgage. I had forgotten I was even doing it. Honestly, it was only $2,400 a month, but it had been running for 2 years without comment or acknowledgement from either of them. I did not call Daniel to tell him any of this. I want you to understand that. I did not post anything. I did not send a letter. I simply made a series of quiet, legal decisions about my own money and my own estate. And then I went to bed at 9:30 and slept 8 hours for the first time in months. The first call came Thursday morning. Daniel's voice was even, practiced calm. Hey, Mom, I was looking at the account and it seems like the transfer didn't go through this month. Probably just a bank error. Can you check on it? A bank error. Not did something change, or are you okay? Or even a basic acknowledgement that this was money I had been giving them voluntarily for 2 years. Just a bank error that I needed to fix. I said, It's not an error, Daniel. A pause. What do you mean? I mean, I stopped the transfer. I should have done it a long time ago, honestly. I'd actually forgotten I was making it. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, that money covers part of our mortgage. I know. We've been counting on it. I know that too. So what are we supposed to do? The same thing most people do. You'll figure it out. He did not respond to that. He said he needed to talk to Renee and would call me back. He called back 40 minutes later, and the measured calm was gone. He sounded rattled, like a man who has just discovered that the floor he was standing on was not the floor he thought it was. Mom, I don't understand why you're doing this. One conversation and you just pull everything? It wasn't one conversation, Daniel. It's been 38 months. We've been under a lot of pressure. I know. The roof alone is going to. I know. Mom. Daniel. I sat down in Howard's chair. I need you to hear what I'm about to say. Your wife posted something publicly this week that described me as controlling and manipulative and toxic. Your response was a heart emoji. I have given your family more than $700,000 since your father died. I have driven 4 hours to sit in the back row of your daughter's recital because there was no seat saved for me. I have overheard your wife describe hosting me on Thanksgiving as a burden. And this week, when I told you I could no longer be your financial safety net, the result was a public Facebook post celebrating your freedom from me. I paused. I need you to sit with all of that. He was quiet for a long time. I didn't write that post, he finally said. No, but you left a heart on it. Another long silence. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't think about how that would look. I need you to think about how it feels, not how it looks. He didn't have an answer for that. We ended the call without resolution, which was uncomfortable, but also, I realized afterward, honest. We had never had an honest call before, not once since Howard died. Every call had been a performance of some kind. Me performing generosity and patience, Daniel performing gratitude, while angling for the next thing. At least now we were in honest territory, even if that territory was painful. The following week was hard. Daniel called twice more. Both times circling back to the finances, the mortgage, the roof. Renee did not call, which I understood. I had become the enemy, and calling the enemy is not in the playbook. But Lily called. On a Wednesday afternoon, out of nowhere, Grandma Maggie, can we video chat? I want to show you the picture I drew. I pressed the button so fast I nearly dropped the phone. Her face filled my screen, rosy and earnest, holding up a drawing of a horse in a field, colored in orange and purple because she had decided horses should be more interesting colors. That is the most beautiful horse I have ever seen, I told her, and I meant it. She told me about school, about a book report she was working on, about a girl in her class named Priya who had become her new best friend. She talked for 22 minutes without stopping, and I listened to every word, and when she finally said she had to go for dinner, I told her I loved her, and she said, love you more. Grandma Maggie and I sat for a while afterward just holding my phone. Whatever happened with Daniel, Lily was not collateral. She was my granddaughter, and I was her grandmother, and that was not conditional on anything. The shift came about 3 weeks after I'd made the changes. Daniel called on a Sunday, and there was something different in his voice. Not the practiced calm, not the rattled desperation, something quieter, something that reminded me, faintly and painfully, of the boy he had been at 12 years old, when Howard had caught him in a lie about skipping school. And Daniel had finally told the truth, ashamed and small. Mom, can I come see you? Just me, not Renee, just to talk. I said yes. He arrived on a Saturday morning. He looked tired in a real way. Not the performed exhaustion of someone seeking sympathy, but the honest fatigue of a man who had not been sleeping well. He sat at my kitchen table and I made coffee, and he did not bring up the mortgage or the roof or the trust. He sat with his hands around the mug and said, I owe you an apology that I don't know how to give. I sat down across from him. I said nothing. I let him find his way. Renee and I have been fighting, he said. Bad fights. About the money, about you, about everything. And it made me look at some things I didn't want to look at. He set down the mug. I've been treating you like a resource. I didn't see it while I was doing it. Or maybe I did see it, and it was just easier not to stop. He looked up at me. Dad would be disgusted with me. Your father would be heartbroken for you, I said. There's a difference. He looked away. After he died, I told myself I was protecting you by handling things, organizing the finances, making sure the estate was in order. But I think part of me decided that because he was gone, you owed it to me to make sure things stayed comfortable. Like the sacrifices they'd made were now my inheritance to collect. He shook his head. That sounds awful when I say it out loud. It sounds honest, I said. I left a heart on that post. His voice broke slightly. I knew it would hurt you. I did it anyway. and I don't even fully know why. I think you do, I said quietly. He was quiet for a moment. Because I was angry. Because you said no for the first time and I didn't know how to handle it. Yes, we sat in silence for a little while. Outside, a mockingbird was working through its repertoire in the magnolia tree Howard had planted the spring before he died. The post is still up, Daniel said. Renee won't take it down. She says you need to earn an apology if you want one. I'm not asking for an apology from Renee. I'm talking to you. She's going to be difficult about this. About all of it. That's between the two of you to work out. He nodded, accepting that. What do you need from me, Mom? Not what do I need from you. What do you need from me? I thought about that for a real moment. Not a quick answer. A real one. I need you to be my son. Not my financial obligation and not my project. Not someone I need to manage carefully so they don't leave. Just my son, who calls me because he wants to talk to me, who remembers my birthday because it matters to him, who comes to Lily's recitals and saves me a seat. I looked at him. I don't need your money, Daniel. I have my own. I need the thing money can't buy. He put his face in his hands. He stayed like that for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were red. I'm going to try, he said. I know that's not enough to say, but I'm going to try. It's enough to start, I told him. He stayed for lunch. I made the chicken salad Howard always loved, with the pecans and the dried cranberries, and Daniel ate 2 helpings and told me it was the best thing he'd had in months. I didn't ask if that was true. I just received it. He called Lily from my kitchen to say hi, and I could hear her voice through the phone, bright and immediate. He handed the phone to me without being asked, and I got another 12 minutes with my granddaughter, this time about a movie she'd seen at school about dolphins. When Daniel left, he hugged me at the door the way he used to when he was young. Not the obligatory half embrace of recent years, but a real hug. Arms fully around me. Chin on my shoulder. He held it for a moment. I love you, Mom. I love you too. I always have. That was never the question. He nodded and walked to his car. I stood on the porch and watched him go. The next 3 months were not smooth. I want to be honest about that because I think the story we tell ourselves about healing tends to leave out the rough parts. Renee did not take down the Facebook post for 6 weeks, and when she finally did, it was without comment or acknowledgement. There were phone calls between Daniel and me that went well, and ones that did not. There was a Sunday in June when he called clearly stressed about money and I could hear him angling toward a request, and I said, Daniel, I'm not going to be able to help with this. And he said I know and pivoted, and we talked for another 20 minutes about a documentary he'd seen. That felt like progress. I did not reinstate the monthly transfer. I made that decision consciously, and I kept it. The roof they figured out by refinancing a portion of the mortgage, which was genuinely the responsible choice, and something they could have done from the beginning if they'd needed to. When people are given an easier option, they take it. That's human nature, not malice. But it meant that when the easier option was gone, they found their own way. Renee and I did not have a direct conversation about the post until 4 months after the fact, at Lily's 10th birthday party, which I had been invited to properly this time, with a real invitation and a seat at the family table. Renee found me in the kitchen where I was helping Lily arrange candles on the cake. When Lily ran off to the living room, Renee stood in the doorway for a moment. I owe you an apology, she said, in the tone of someone who has practiced this and is still not comfortable with it. You don't owe me anything, I said, and meant it. But if you want to give one, I'm listening. She looked surprised by that distinction. The post was wrong. I was angry and I said things publicly that I should have handled privately. Or not said at all. Thank you, I said simply. She looked at me for a moment. This woman who had married my son and resented my presence for years. I could see the architecture of it now. The way her own insecurity had expressed itself as hostility. The way being financially dependent had twisted her self-regard until she needed someone to blame. I did not like her, not exactly, but I understood her more than I had before. I know you think I married Daniel for security, she said. I think you loved him and also needed security, and those two things got tangled up, I said. That's not a character judgment. That's just what happens sometimes. She was quiet for a moment. Then Lily came running back in for the cake, and Renee became a mother again, focused and warm in a way that was genuine. Whatever else was complicated about Renee, she loved Lily. That was real. The birthday candles were lit. We sang. Lily blew them out with her whole small body, leaning in with total commitment, and every single candle went dark. I am writing this, or rather, telling this, from my front porch in Savannah on an early evening in October. The light is the particular gold that this city does better than anywhere else I've ever been. Howard loved this light. He used to bring his coffee out here and just sit in it. This past Sunday, Daniel called and we talked for 41 minutes about nothing important. About a book he'd read, a storm that had come through Atlanta. A funny thing Lily had said. He did not ask for anything. He called because he wanted to talk to his mother. At the end of the call, he said, "Mom, I'm going to come down next month. Not for anything, just to visit. Maybe we can take Lily to that beach you were telling me about." "I'd love that," I told him. "Me too," he said. "And here is what I want to tell you. The people watching from your cities and your living rooms and your own complicated families. I am not a woman who figured this out easily or quickly. I gave too much for too long to people who had learned to take it. And I did that in part because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of being the difficult one. Afraid of losing the last pieces of my family after Howard was gone. But what I discovered, on the other side of all of that, is that the money was never what bound us together. Love cannot be purchased. Presence cannot be rented. When I stopped subsidizing a relationship that had become transactional, I did not lose my son. I found him again, or rather, I gave him the space to find himself. Howard used to say that the most loving thing you can do for someone is tell them the truth. Not cruelly, not as punishment, but clearly and without apology, because truth, however uncomfortable, is the only foundation strong enough to build something real on. I believed him then. I believe him more now. If you are sitting somewhere watching this with your own version of this story, with your own Daniel or your own Renee, your own accumulation of checks written and sacrifices made and holidays endured in the back row, I want to say this directly to you. Your worth is not measured in your usefulness. You are not a resource. You are a person. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop pretending otherwise. The light is almost gone now. The mockingbirds have settled. I'm going to go inside and call Lily to say goodnight. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You'd be surprised how many people are sitting alone with something just like this, waiting to find out that they're not the only one.